Pan-Africanism and Africa's independence when it comes to funding its own projects is a question that is often posed to the continent. Debating this motion today is Mayori Secondary versus St. Mary's Igoji, and the motion reads, developed countries' influence on Africa's policy making is a great deterrent to Africa's sustainable development. I read the motion again. Developed countries' influence on Africa's policy making is a great deterrent to Africa's sustainable development. All the best to both teams. Team proposition, first speaker, you have 3 minutes.
Standing here, I'm a strong advocate of African development because Africa is home, and east or west, home is the best. And that's why I will firmly propose that developed countries' influence on African policy making is a great deterrent to Africans' development. We all know that developed countries will influence the policies made by African countries, and this hinders African countries from achieving their sustainable development. I am Zioki David, St. James Mayori Secondary School. I'll begin by describing the key terminologies in our motion. What is a developed country? A developed country is a sovereign state that has a high quality of life, developed economy, and advanced technology. What is policy making? Policy making is broadly referred to as the process used by a government to decide what to do or not to do about public problems, issues that requires its attention and action. And what are sustainable developments? These are economic developments that are conducted without depletion of natural resources. Now, I want to start with the nationalization policy that was in Tanzania. Tanzanian Parliament in 1967 passed the policy of nationalization, which will enable equal distribution of resources to the citizens of Tanzania. What happened? These farms that were owned by aliens, or what we call foreign investors, withdrew from Tanzania. Also, these developed countries and the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank ceased to finance the projects in Tanzania. Then, what happened next? Ali Hassan Mwinyi, who was the president from 1985 to 1995, introduced some reforms. Reforms were introduced so that it could attract foreign investors. And therefore, we see that these countries forced him to liberalize the market in Tanzania to suit them, hence affecting the nationalization policy which was initiated by the Tanzanians. Thank you.
Team opposition, first speaker, you have 3 minutes.
No man is an island. That is what our English forefathers said. Now today, I stand before you today to say that developed countries' influence on Africa's policy making is not a great deterrence to Africa's sustainable development. My name is Tennessee Njue from St. Mary's Girls High School, Igoji, where heroes are made. Now, the first proposer started by telling us that the Tanzanian parliament in 1967 came up with a so-called nationalism policy. Foreign investors withdrew. However, fast forward to 2023, we have seen that the Ugandan government resisted to adopt the LGBTQ policy, even in the face of the US threatening to withdraw support, that is financially, and also imposing travel restrictions on them. That means that developed countries influence, it cannot shake these developing countries like Uganda, because Yoweri Museveni is unrelenting. He will not be shaken just because they are getting financial aid from the US government. No, Joe Biden can do whatever he wants, but the Ugandan government is a sovereign state and will not be moved. Now, on to my first point. According to the Daily Nation, dated 14th June 2023, the rise in Kenya's consumer price index has seen wheat and maize flour prices rise by 14% and 31% respectively. Now, Kenya is working to bring the prices down, and the UK, which is a developed country, is supporting these efforts through the World Food Programme, where recently Kenya received a shipment of fertilizer from the World Food Programme. Now, Kenya's economy currently is on a depression, and we know that the prices of many commodities, including fertilizer, have gone up. Now, the UK, supporting us by giving us a shipment of fertilizer, is going to see an increase in food production that is going to help in the attainment of the SDG of zero hunger. Secondly, also according to the Daily Nation, dated 14th June 2023, we can see that the British High Commissioner has seen that the UK-Kenya partnership grow from strength to strength. Now, the UK investment in Kenya and the Kenya climate leadership through the Menengai geothermal plant will see it provide affordable electricity for 750,000 Kenyans. What does this mean? This means 750,000 more job opportunities for Kenyans. This also means 750,000 more channels for the government to collect tax, and it also means that 750,000 more ways for Kenyans to improve their standards of living. Now tell me if that is not developed countries helping Africa, Kenya in particular. Now, this is going to help in the attainment of the SDG for affordable and clean energy. Geothermal energy is, the UK is helping Kenya to tap into its resources. Now, Kenya has realized that other than hydroelectric power and the wind, they can also tap into the geothermal energy, and the UK is supporting this. Now, if that is not developed countries assisting African nations such as Kenya, which is a developing country, then I do not decipher what developing countries assisting Africa means. Thank you.
Team Proposition, second speaker, you have 3 minutes.
If I speak with human eloquency and angelic ecstasy, but I'm out here to kill great minds that think developed countries don't influence Africa policy making. I am Masimbane, Mayori Secondary School, and I'm here to strongly propose this motion that states developed countries' influence on Africa policy making is a great deterrent to African sustainable development. If I may start, my fellow beautiful lady here, she talked the issue about LGBTQ. Yeah, I get this. I love the way the Ugandan president, Luero Kiguta Museveni, I love the way he was. I love the way he stands firm with his country. But there was the same issue in Uganda. Let us bring it closer to home, yeah? In Uganda, not any other place. Not Kenya, not Swaziland. I mean Uganda, yeah? So in Uganda, there was this non-governmental organization, an NGO by the name SMAG. It was from USA. As we know the goals of Africa, we have a goal that says one should have good health and well-being of the members of the state. If I may say this, there was a case recently in Twitter, a case of a young boy of 26 years old. This boy by the name Mukisa Lukisha. This boy was lured into doing porn gay sex videos. And he was paid by this MAG, this non-governmental institution, that used to pay this boy so that he could indulge himself in this LGBTQ, which is against our culture as Africans. So, I hereby stand here to tell you, there is no way we can say that developed countries don't influence us. This says because in Uganda, the same thing happened when the president said in a congregation that he was addressing to the members, He said that LGBTQ started as a secret. It was not something that was viral. It was not something that was known to many people. It was a secretive thing. But when the Western culture influenced us, it made us start implementing. It made young youths, young people in school like us, they started going as to by what the Western culture is doing. Secondly, I like to talk about industries. We see a country like China. China imports cheap goods in Kenya. For instance, we can find that an iPhone in Kenya is around 156,000, yeah? And then you find that China has come with a cheaper phone, yeah? So when this China comes with a cheaper phone, you'll find that people in Kenya will be using the cheaper phone more than the more expensive phone. This hinders our sustainable development as Africans. So my fellow sisters, I'd like to urge you, just come join us because winter is coming soon. Thank you.
Second speaker, team opposition, you have 3 minutes.
Truly, a friend in need is a friend indeed. This very old proverb that has been used from my primary school to my secondary school is becoming very significant in the relationship that we, Africa, have with other developed countries such as USA, such as Japan, and all other countries. My fellow second proposer said that LGBTQ was against the African culture, whereby she said that the boy that was being paid was being corrupted by those LGBTQ. But I have a question for her. Does LGBTQ not provide job opportunities? Doesn't it boost the economy? Had the boy really had the choice to decline the offer if really as an African he knew that it was against the African culture? But why did he allow himself to be paid off by those developed countries in order to be in that LGBTQ? It is because it is not the blame of the developed countries. They're the ones who lure, but it was the responsibility of the boy, knowing that the African culture was against LGBTQ, to oppose and say it is against the African culture. But because of his desperate need of job opportunities, that's when he took the offer. He could have resigned if it is not because of those job opportunities, but he took the offer. Also, to back up my first opposer, on whereby according to Daily Nation 14 June 2023, whereby the UK has strengthened their partnership with Kenya, one of the developing countries, whereby it is investing in the Menengai geothermal areas. This will greatly improve the industrial sector, whereby these industries will be able to acquire these affordable sources, affordable energy from the geothermal sector, be able to convert it into, be able to acquire this affordable energy from the geothermal sector, will be able to facilitate a more economic purchase of a more economic will be able to use these energy sources for the production purposes, which will increase the quality and also the quantity of goods. This will enable it, when it is venturing into the foreign market, to be able even to give a boost to their commodities, whereby these commodities, because of their high quality and quantity, it will be able to lead to sustainable economic growth, because many industries will also form around that geothermal area because of that affordable pricing of the power. Also, according to Kerugoya Municipality Schools.co.ke, competency-based curriculum was formed as an education trend in the USA, formulated by N. Chomsky in 1965. According to www.sciencedirect.com, African countries such as Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and Kenya will benefit from building talents, professions, and practical skills, more precisely than the 844 system. You tell me if these developed countries are not helping Kenya in boosting the education system, which is one of the SDGs. Thank you.
Third speaker, team proposition, you have 3 minutes.
Salutation to you all. A coin has two sides, the head and the tail. In this case, opposition and proposition. My name is Isaac Kuria from Mayori Secondary School. I'm here to convince you that developed countries' influence on Africa's policy making is a great deterrent towards achieving Africa's sustainable development. Interference in Africa started with slavery and gradually graduated to colonization. When the Berlin Conference was held in 1884-1885, the African continent was partitioned into small spheres of influence. And after colonization lost its lust, it is then when most African countries regained independence. But to some point, this is not independence. This is interdependence. You ask why? I'm here to tell you why. Up to now, when an African country wants a loan, it goes to the famous institutions, famous financial institutions. That is the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. But these two institutions, the IMF and the World Bank, the main stakeholders and the main contributors are the European powers, the superpowers, and the developed countries. And that is why when an African country borrows a loan from the IMF, it has it to repay at an interest which is 8% higher. An interest rate which is 8% higher than a developed country. The reason for this, they say, is because African countries contribute less in the IMF and the World Bank. But here's what we are saying. Our very own President William Ruto said that African countries are not beggars. We don't need mercy from anyone. We will pay commensurate. As long as it comes to the matter of paying, we will be able to pay equally. Because when these taxes are raised to this point, we have to raise our taxes. We have to enhance the targeting cheats and expand the tax base rate, which leaves the country, which leaves the nation beyond a state of imagination, which leaves most Kenyans in a state of despair, a state of hopelessness. And then, to our opposers, the first opposer, you talked about geothermal power. I'm here to tell you that geothermal power is one of the factors which pollute the environment drastically. It emits a lot of steam, which affects the ozone layer and stuff. And then you talked about these countries are helping Africa. My friend, you haven't checked the conditions. These conditions are diabolical. They are conditions that we cannot stand. And that is why up to now, for example, in Kenya, the tax rates have gone to a state that most of us could not imagine. Again, you also talked about Uganda. My friend, if these European countries withdraw their help from Uganda, we are going to really suffer. The Ugandan government will really suffer, because you cannot compare the GDP of Uganda with that of USA. USA is more developed, and Uganda still needs USA. And USA needs Uganda. Okay? So, to my point, what I'm calling for is for all Africans to unite, because once we are united, we cannot be affected. That is why SADC and ECOWAS are not touched by the European countries. They only come for that one country which they can affect. Thank you.
Team opposition, third speaker, you have 3 minutes.
A drowning man will clutch to the final straw. My name is Von Vicky Karemo, representing St. Mary's High School, Igoji. I stand strongly to oppose the motion that states developed countries' influence on Africa's policy making is a great deterrent to Africa's sustainable development. Reason being, according to www.worldbank.organization.uk, it has stated that returns of investors in Africa are of help to the trans-Saharan countries. For example, in the sector of ICT, where they have recorded about 50% increase to 59% increase in between 2019 to 2023. Here, I embark on my brother, the first proposer. He has just said that the nationalization policy in Tanzania failed due to withdrawal of the foreign investors, simply meaning these developed countries are the ones who are the foreign investors in this case. Therefore, if they happen to come and invest in our countries, then at the end of the day, we emerge grown to the goal of economic growth as well as industrial growth. According to www. kerugoyaschools.ke, we found that CBK was found to be an education trend, which was obtained. CBC was found to be an educational trend, which was obtained from the United States of America. If you consider the education system that Kenya is adopting currently, it has been adopted from the United Nations. Also, if you look at the education system that South Africa is using currently, it has been obtained as well from these developed countries. Therefore means that if these African kids start specialization as young as 6 years, all the way to the end of their life, it means that by the time they are at 30, they will have these skills and they will have expertise in what they are doing. And at the end of the day, we are going to increase our innovation skills, and therefore we are going to create more job opportunities, and as well as that, as well as increasing the incomes and revenues of our country. Finally, I would like to say that reviewing to the global generic characteristics policy, which has been obtained from the Kenya Policies for Prosperity, published by the Oxford University Press, it has stated that the key reason to reduce sustainable development in Africa, it is not developed countries. It is due to inadequate rate of investment due to poor investors from African continent. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you, it's not at all times we have to lay the blemish to these developed countries. As for them, they do their part. But what about you Africans? For instance, they offer aid to us each and every year. But you Africans, due to your bad systems, you always underutilize the funds. That is why every time you are in need of a debt, you'll have to go to these developed countries to seek aid, and therefore you have also a choice to make. You have a decision to make on whether to borrow loans from them, or rather stagnate your economic growth and then obtain increase in GDP and then invest in your country. Thank you.
Team Proposition, you have 1 minute to give your closing remark.
I'd like to understand, up to what point will Africa be receiving help? When will we get time to rise on our feet, redefine ourselves, and rise over? Because you've talked about European countries helping us. Yes, they help us, but I've already talked about the diabolical conditions that come with this help. Conditions that oppress us. They put us between the devil and the deep blue sea. Again, about the CBC, this thing, it is failing. It's tragically failing, because how will these children join the high schools? Because according to CBC, there's no ranking. How will these children join their respective high schools? As I conclude, I'd like to encourage all of us to unite and join hands as African countries, because one is better than two. And also, the reason why African countries are not touching organizations, that is ECOWAS and SADC, is because we're united. They know when they take one country, they can easily manipulate it. So the main point here is to reunite as Africans. Thank you.
Team Opposition, you have 1 minute to give your closing remark.
To my brother on the other side, I've just stated that CBC is based on talent, unlike the 844 system, which is exam-based. Therefore, I said that if they are going to increase their expertise, by the time they are 30, they will have increased innovations, and we will be miles away in different fields. Also, I would like to urge you all, ladies and gentlemen, that if 50% contribution of these developed countries to us, as well as 50% contribution of Africans itself, will lead to this 100% improvement in our sustainable economic development. Thank you.
When we talk about developed countries' influence on Africa policy making, is influence just the help you get? Is it just the industries they come set up? Is it the money they give us? Is it just what IMF gives us? Is there an influence? Is there another influence on how they affect our policies? And also, we didn't look at the issues on policy making. We started out well, actually, with Tennessee and Nzioki. You talked about a whole policy on nationalization, Tennessee, you talked about that, you gave an example of the UK and the World Food Program. So we saw that effect on the Africa policy making. And then when you look at this motion, there's another twist to it, where they're saying it's a great deterrent to Africa's sustainable development. So how does this influence on the policy making actually affect sustainable development in Africa? What is sustainable development in Africa? We would have had these points where you just merge the two, and we get a good explanation on the arguments you're giving.
This is a motion that required you to research, but I'm happy because the first two speakers opened up very well, and we could tell that you did your research. So commendable work for the first speakers. I'm insisting on that because Nzioki started well. What I feel Nzioki could have done though, because of how you're establishing your case, time ran out for you, and we could feel you wanted to say more to build your case. You could learn something from Tennessee quite first, moving as fast so you can deliver as much as possible. That's what you do. Sometimes look at the summary so you can deliver the most important within your 3 minutes, okay? So that's well done for you, Tennessee. I think you started off very, very well, and that was commendable for your team. Now, the debate then, after the first speakers, starts now to look something else when we come to the second speaker. We come to Mercy, we start hearing Twitter stories that are not relating to policy making, honestly. And then all of a sudden, we hear Felista as well trying to rebuttal the same thing for almost other minutes. You get it? So you guys then lose it. Your first speaker started you very well, but second speakers, even if you didn't have any rebuttals to give, you could have just given submissions as well. You get it? Or build from what they built. So in fact, there was a waste of time there, and it wasn't coming out well. Felista, check on your time. You're penalized on that. Isaac and Van Vicky, Karembo, yes, you come over as third speakers. Isaac, yes, fair cross-examination on your end. But you need to back every research that you give, all right? Like when you come and say, for example, 8% more, we are paying 8% more, according to who? You heard it, say it somewhere, but you need to say it, all right? Because everybody can say that's a straight statement. You know, IMF can say, no, who told you that? You get it, eh? So you want to always back your that, and you can learn that from Nzioki. You know, it was somewhere there, but I was impressed by the first speakers. Moving on.
I think it's a debate that has allowed us to reevaluate our Pan-Africanism. So we move forward to the judges' scoring sheet, and I will get straight to announce the results. The judges awarded Mayori Secondary with 63.2%. A round of applause, please, for Mayori Secondary. And the judges awarded St. Mary Girls Igoji with 67.5%. A round of applause for St. Mary's. And the winners of this debate is St. Mary Girls Igoji. And we have come to the end of this debate. And until next time, it is goodbye from us. Remember to check our social media handles on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok at The Debate Circle. Thank you very much.